In the early 1990s, handheld gaming was dominated by one name: Game Boy. Nintendo's machine, paired with the overnight sensation that was Tetris, found its way into the hands of millions of gamers, cementing its position as the handheld of choice. But Sega, never one to shy away from a challenge, had a different vision for handheld gaming. They wanted to bring the full console experience to your hands: full colour graphics, rich immersive sound, and that unmistakable energy of Sega. Released in 1990, the Game Gear was Sega's answer. A sleek, full-colour handheld that wasn't just built on the power of the Master System, it surpassed it with a larger, deeper colour palette. It was bold, forward-thinking, and years ahead of its time. While the world wasn't quite ready for such a technically advanced handheld, the Game Gear proved that Sega's vision for portable gaming went far beyond the competition. And now, 35 years on, the Game Gear stands as a testament to Sega's ambition and innovation. A handheld that dared to do things differently. So let's celebrate the best of the best, the defining titles across every genre that showed you just what Sega's 8-bit powerhouse could really do, and why it's still worthy of your time even today. In each category, I'll be highlighting the games that I consider the very best the Game Gear has to offer, while also highlighting several other games that came close. There's a load of games to get through, so let's get into it. SNK's Fatal Fury Special hit the Game Gear in 1995 and has absolutely no right to look, run and play as well as it does. Known as Garou Densetsu Special in Japan, the game is essentially an enhanced version of Fatal Fury 2. The fighters are instantly recognisable from their more powerful console counterparts, and each fighter even has their own unique stage, complete with day and night cycles for each bout. Players can choose from 9 fighters including Terry Bogard, Joe Higashi, Billy Kane and Ryo Sakazaki. 7 fighters were cut, understandable given the nature of the hardware, with the likes of Big Bear, Axel Hawk and Lawrence Blood left out. The game runs and plays beautifully though, with responsive controls, fluid animation and plenty of special moves per character, despite the reduced number of buttons. Fatal Fury Special includes a King of Fighters mode, which is the classic single player arcade experience, as well as a CPU versus mode and a survival mode. And if you know another Game Gear owner with the gear to gear cable, you can battle it out in person. Fatal Fury Special on Game Gear stands in a class of its own. A runner-up in this genre though is Mortal Kombat 2. With large, detailed sprites, it does an admirable job given the hardware, although it does feel like the focus on the sprites has reduced the headroom available for backgrounds, with only 2 on show, the Combat Tomb and the Pit 2, and the Combat Tomb features the game's only stage fatality. The roster of selectable characters is reduced to 8, with some major absentees, namely Johnny Cage, Raiden, Kung Lao and Baraka. As you'd expect on a Sega platform of the era, gore and fatalities are included, although the fatalities are simplified from the arcade version on several characters to simply explode their opponents' bodies, although friendships and babalities are nowhere to be seen. Despite the plethora of cutbacks though, it remains an extremely playable and impressive fighter on the system. Streets of Rage 2 on Game Gear does an admirable job of translating Sega's 16-bit classic to handheld form. Despite the obvious technical cutbacks, it still captures the spirit of the Mega Drive original perfectly. The Game Gear version includes Axel, Blaze and Skate as playable characters, with Max dropping out. Each fighter retains their signature moves and the combat remains just as satisfying, with familiar punches, throws and special attacks that fans of the series will recognise instantly. The sprites are pretty detailed, all things considered, with smooth animation, although the number of on-screen enemies has been reduced, which is understandable for the hardware. The star of the show though are the environments, which while simplified remain true to the Mega Drive versions and will make 16-bit players feel right at home. As for the soundtrack, Yuzo Koshiro does a brilliant job in bringing Streets of Rage 2's iconic soundtrack to 8-bit hardware, and tracks like In the Bar, Never Return Alive and Spin on the Bridge are just as catchy here as they are on the Mega Drive. It may not have all the stages of the Mega Drive version, but if you're looking for a beat 'em up to pass some time on your Game Gear during those long commutes, look no further than Streets of Rage 2. Our runner-up here is Battletoads, a port of the 1991 NES game, released for the Mega Drive and Game Gear in 1993. The Game Gear version is a single-player game, and 3 of the stages found in the original game are left out: Intruder, Excluder, Terracubes and Rat Race, while the remaining stages make changes to accommodate the hardware. Visually, it's up there with some of the Game Gear's best, with bright, colourful visuals packed with humour. Don't let this game fool you though, it's absolutely solid, made even more challenging on Game Gear due to some questionable collision detection. When players are hit by enemies, they enter a stunned state, which on the Game Gear has a longer recovery time than other versions, adding to the challenge and or frustration, depending how you look at it. Don't let these minor issues put you off though. Battletoads is packed with charm and will challenge even the most seasoned of handheld gamers. When FIFA International Soccer hit the Mega Drive in 1993, it changed football games as we know it. While Sensible Soccer and Dino Dini's Goal had long been the champions of football games, FIFA took things to a whole new level with an isometric view of the pitch, which included stands full of animated spectators, on-field referees, and even goalkeepers who wore gloves. The Game Gear version of FIFA is its own unique game rather than a port of the Mega Drive, yet it brings over all the game modes and teams with exhibition, tournament, playoffs and league to choose from. Visually, it's a great representation of the Mega Drive game, with chunky player models, decent animation, athletic goalkeepers and a plethora of tactical tweaks for players to make. As the name suggests, only international teams are selectable, but there are 52 to choose from, which includes the fictional super team EA All-Stars. For the most part, it plays well, although you do need to fight the controls at times against the better teams, mainly due to the pass and shoot buttons being not quite as snappy as, say, Sensible Soccer. However, winning matches in tournaments still feels rewarding, and when it comes to football on the go on Game Gear, nothing can touch FIFA International Soccer. Like every console of the 90s, the Game Gear wasn't about to miss out on the slam-dunking, backboard-shattering madness of NBA Jam, which is a runner-up in this category. And honestly, for a handheld version, it puts in a solid effort. The sprites are colourful, the action's fast, and the dunks still have that over-the-top arcade flair that we know and love. Of course, being a portable version, a few compromises were made. NBA Jam has always been a 3-button game, with turbo, pass and shoot. On Game Gear, this means that using the start button is required for one of those commands, which, while awkward, is customisable in the settings from one of 6 presets. The on-court action is solid though, and credit where it's due, NBA Jam still captures the spirit of the arcade original. It may not be the full-fat NBA Jam experience, but if you've got a Game Gear and fancy reliving some 90s sports mayhem, this one's still on fire! There was only going to be one winner here, and it's Robocop vs the Terminator. The Game Gear version somehow packs all the detail, gore and gameplay of the 16-bit version onto its tiny screen, and the results are absolutely spectacular. Robocop looks and moves exactly as he should, enemies explode in a puddle of blood as they're taken out, and iconic villains like Ed 209 and Kane are just as menacing here as they are on the Mega Drive. The environments take their cue from the 16-bit versions too, and the dark, moody vibe of Frank Miller's graphic novel is perfectly scaled down and looks amazing on the Game Gear. Gameplay wise though, it's spot on. The level design, while simplified from the 16-bit versions, offers the same core experience, with a combination of platforming and combat required to succeed. And that's the thing about the Game Gear version, it doesn't feel compromised, it does feel like a full 16-bit version shrunk down onto the handheld. Make no mistake, the game is one hell of a challenge, but there's so much robo-goodness here to ensure that just like the Terminator, you'll be back. Runner-up in this category is Gunstar Heroes, released exclusively in Japan and developed by M2. A European release was listed in the September 1994 issue of UK magazine Sega Pro, but never came to anything. Visually, Gunstar Heroes on Game Gear is incredible, with bright vivid colours and tons of enemies on screen. There are occasions when sprite flickering makes an appearance when the action gets a bit too hectic, but it's understandable when you see just what the Game Gear is trying to throw around the screen here. In terms of content, the Game Gear version is missing one of the stages, and several changes are made to the other levels' layout, making this a unique experience in its own right. If you've got a Game Gear and an EverDrive cart, this is definitely one to check out, and if you've got a modern LCD screen mod, you'll be blown away at just how good this looks. Released in 1992, the GG Shinobi 2 The Silent Fury took everything great about the original and sharpened it to perfection. Once again, you take control of Joe Musashi and his band of colour-coded ninjas, each with their own unique weapons and abilities. Your mission? To reclaim the 5 elemental crystals stolen by the Techno Warriors. A perfect excuse then to slice, jump and battle your way through some of the most refined platforming action on the Game Gear. Like the first game, the opening 4 stages can be tackled in any order, and each rescued ninja joins your team, expanding your abilities and opening new paths in earlier levels. It's a clever design that encourages exploration and mastery of each character's skills. Visually, The Silent Fury is a clear step up from its predecessor and gives me real Revenge of Shinobi vibes. The level design is far tighter than the first game, and while perhaps a more forgiving game, that's actually to its benefit more than a detriment. That's not to say The Silent Fury is an easy game though, far from it, but it's nowhere as punishing as the first game and feels more balanced as a result. With its tight controls, stylish visuals and challenging difficulty, The Silent Fury stands as one of the Game Gear's finest, a portable shinobi adventure that truly delivers the spirit of the series. Batman Returns on the Game Gear delivers a dark, action-packed platforming experience inspired by Tim Burton's 1992 film. Batman glides, punches and hurls batarangs through Gotham City's gritty streets and rooftops, all gorgeously detailed for an 8-bit handheld, with impressive sprites, fluid animation and moody backdrops that capture the film's atmosphere perfectly. The gameplay is sharp and varied. You can switch between 3 batarang styles, long range, powerful or balanced, depending on your approach, and Batman's grappling hook adds a satisfying layer of verticality. It's not just for climbing though, you can swing over gaps, strike enemies or reach otherwise inaccessible hidden items. Stages are branched off into alternate routes, adding a welcome touch of replayability before culminating in a boss encounter. Fans of the movie will find plenty to love here, and with its responsive controls, strong level design and surprisingly cinematic feel, Batman Returns stands as one of the Game Gear's most polished and visually striking action games. Ristar on the Game Gear is more than just a scaled down port, it's a full-on reimagining of Sega's Mega Drive classic. Released in 1995 and developed by Japan System House, the developer behind Ninja Gaiden on Game Gear, it keeps the same charming premise. You play as Ristar, a little star with extendable arms used to grab, swing and headbutt enemies into submission. While it shares themes with the Mega Drive version, the Game Gear release features completely new level layouts, unique enemy placements and even entirely new worlds. Each planet ends with a boss fight, although the mini-bosses from the Mega Drive version are gone. Collecting stars scattered across each level works much like Sonic's rings or Mario's coins, granting extra lives at every 100. Ristar's moveset also expands here, with the ability to use enemy weapons as makeshift tools or platforms, adding a touch of puzzle solving to the action. Bright, expressive visuals and smooth controls make Ristar one of the Game Gear's most delightful and technically impressive platformers. A close runner-up here though is Tempo Jr., the 1995 sequel to Tempo on the 32X and the only Tempo game to be released in Europe. Tempo Jr. sees Sega's groovy Grasshopper back for another rhythm-fueled adventure, this time in a simpler, more kid-friendly platformer tailor-made for the Game Gear. Tempo can run, jump and hover with his wings while snapping out musical notes to stun enemies. Collecting CDs and musical notes refills his health bar, and when it's maxed out you can unleash the flashy dance attack that turns every nearby enemy into gold coins. While the gameplay is straightforward, it's the presentation that really steals the show. Tempo Jr. bursts with personality, Expressive animations, vibrant backgrounds and lots of cheeky humour make it one of the best looking and most charming games on the system. From Tempo's dance moves to the cartoon style reactions of his enemies, everything here feels alive and full of energy. It's light-hearted, colourful fun, proof that even late in the Game Gear's life, Sega could still make it sing. And this one is even more special, given it's the only game in the Tempo series that made its way to Europe, sitting between Tempo on 32X and Super Tempo on the Sega Saturn. Road Rash is our winner in this category, and the 1991 Mega Drive release loses none of its appeal or content on its way to Game Gear. While the visuals have been redrawn for the 8-bit versions, it still has all the tracks and rival bikers found in the 16-bit version. Gameplay wise, it's a little slower than the Mega Drive game, although PAL gamers may not feel too big of a difference due to the 50Hz refresh rate, with Game Gear running at 60Hz. The action is slowed down a bit for a reason though, as it makes combat on the road a lot easier on the smaller screen, but it's still satisfying smacking someone square in the mouth as you ride past them. Just like the Mega Drive version, players can shop for a new bike at the end of each race, with cash earned by winning races on the game's 5 courses. Players start with a budget of just $1,000, making the ultimate prize of the Diablo 1000 seem a distant target at $25,000. One of the most impressive things about Road Rash on Game Gear though is the terrain itself, because you'd think with all the content and visuals crammed in here that the tracks would take a hit and be flat, but nope, the Game Gear version has all the bumps, hills and undulating sections of the Mega Drive game. Just like Robocop vs the Terminator, this doesn't feel like a compromised port. It feels complete in both look and content, and given Road Rash's popularity back in the day, having a version this good to take with you anywhere was incredible. In second place we have Sonic Drift 2, renamed to Sonic Drift Racing in Europe given that we didn't get the first game outside of Japan. When playing Sonic Drift 2, I couldn't help but notice little things that are still present today in Sonic Racing Crossworlds, and you can find a review of that one here on the channel too. The power-ups, rival systems, the rubber banding and the punishing AI are all present here. Sonic Drift 2 adds 3 new characters to the roster, with Metal Sonic from Sonic CD, Fang from Sonic Triple Trouble and Knuckles, fresh from his appearance in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Visually it hits all the right spots. Stages are colourful and inspired by classic Sonic levels, as well as having original tracks unique to the game. The addition of power-ups makes this an entirely different game to the original, and brings Sonic Drift 2 closer to Mario Kart in terms of gameplay. If you love Sonic and you're looking for a kart racer on your Game Gear, look no further. The two games in this category are too close to call. First up though, it's Desert Strike, another Mega Drive classic that makes its way to the Game Gear without feeling compromised. Visually, this one captures the look and feel of the 16-bit game perfectly, as you fly around the map taking out power stations and airfields while managing your fuel and ammo and looking to rescue prisoners. The physical start button on the Game Gear also makes this one feel like a more authentic experience. Used to bring up your map and objectives, whereas on the Master System you had to press the pause button on the console itself, making it feel like a more disjointed experience compared to the handheld version. On Game Gear, pressing the 1 button fires your Hellfire missiles, while holding it allows you to strafe. Pressing the 2 button fires your Hydra missiles, and holding it down fires your guns. Desert Strike is a shoot 'em up that requires you to think and plan ahead, and if you fly in all guns blazing, you'll either get shot down or find yourself in no position to take out the next target. This is one title that every Game Gear owner should try. Next up is the phenomenal GG Alesta 2, aka Power Strike 2 in Europe. Bullet hell shooters were everywhere in the 90s as titles like Batsugan, Dodonpachi and Radiant Silvergun came to the fore. To see a title of this kind on Game Gear is insane, even if the smaller screen does make things a little too busy at times. Taking the role of the pilot Alice Wizen, you begin the game by choosing one of 4 weapon types for your ship, the Lance Bird, although the other 3 variants of weapon can be picked up as specials during gameplay. Visually, Power Strike 2 pushes the Game Gear to its limits, with tons of enemies on screen, explosion effects everywhere, bullets coming in all directions, huge boss battles and incredibly detailed levels. It's a shame that we never got to see a port of R-Type on the Game Gear, even more so given we got an 8-bit version on the Master System, but Power Strike 2 definitely scratched that shooter itch on Sega's handheld. The winner in this section is undoubtedly Lemmings. Somehow all the charm, character levels and humour of the Amiga classic have found their way onto Sega's handheld. Now you'd think that without a mouse, playing Lemmings would be near impossible, but the Game Gear's screen size works to its advantage here in relation to the size of the on-screen cursor used to select your Lemmings and navigate them through stages. Now I know a lot of viewers of the channel will probably have played Lemmings on the Mega Drive, and to you guys, that may be your go-to version of the game, but as an Amiga player back in the day who scoffed at the idea of using a D-pad for such a game, I was really pleased at how Lemmings works on the Game Gear. Visually it's incredible, with all the colour and detail you'd expect, and the Game Gear's extended colour palette really does show with Lemmings. The music is instantly recognisable to long-time players, and it's just as catchy, while the Lemmings' little voices as they shout "Let's go" and "Oh no" can't help but raise a smile. And while some stages have been stripped back and the number of Lemmings reduced compared to the Mega Drive and Amiga versions, there's still tons of content here for puzzle fans to get stuck into. Our runner-up is 1996's Baku Baku Animal, a port of the Sega Saturn and Sega Titan Video arcade game, and also one of the final official releases for the Game Gear. The idea is simple yet brilliant. Match the animals with the food that they love. Monkeys with bananas, pandas with bamboo, and rabbits with carrots, and watch as they gobble up massive chains of blocks for huge scores. Baku Baku is a battle of reflexes and strategy. Clearing big combos sends junk blocks over to your opponent's screen, quickly turning the tide in a match. It's easy to pick up but surprisingly deep, and rewards smart planning and quick thinking. With its bright visuals, charming animations and catchy music, Baku Baku has no right to look this good on the Game Gear, especially considering its arcade and Sega Saturn roots. Shining Force 2 The Sword of Hyjia brought Sega's beloved tactical RPG series to the small screen, and somehow it lost none of its charm or depth along the way. Released on the Game Gear in 1993, this sequel to the original Shining Force Gaiden picks up just 2 months after the events of the first game. When the mystical Sword of Hyjia is stolen by the dark forces of Yom, Prince Nick sets out to stop them, leaving his comrades, Dina and the ever-reliable Mayfair, to lead the counterattack and defend the Kingdom of Cyprus. Gameplay sticks closely to the classic Shining Force formula, blending grid-based turn-by-turn strategy with tight RPG gameplay as you move across battlefields, upgrade and promote characters, cast magic and plan your attacks. Despite being on Sega's 8-bit handheld, the Sword of Hyjia manages to capture the heart of the main series, with deep strategy, memorable heroes and that unmistakable Shining Force charm, making it one of the most impressive and ambitious titles ever released on the Game Gear. Our runner-up here is Defenders of Oasis, an original adventure by Sega CS2. You play as the Prince of Shanadar, whose kingdom falls under threat when an ancient evil, the dark god Ahriman, is awakened. Joined by your loyal allies and a powerful genie, you set out to reclaim the Rings of Light before Ahriman's servants can destroy them and free the dark god from his imprisonment. The gameplay blends exploration and classic turn-based combat with a focus on strategy and resource management. The Genie's lamp-based upgrade system adds a unique twist, setting it apart from other 8-bit RPGs of the time. What really makes Defenders of Oasis shine though is its presentation. Beautiful detailed sprites, charming animation and an exotic soundtrack that combine to make this feel much larger than the platform that it runs on. So there we have it, 20 games and 10 categories that I believe represent the very best of the Game Gear library as we celebrate 35 years of our favourite 8-bit handheld. And while many focus on sales numbers and battery life, it can be lost just how incredible a system the Game Gear was. It truly did set out to do something entirely different from Nintendo, as Sega really did look to put the full home console experience in the palms of your hand. Hopefully there's some games here that you've never tried, and this video inspires you to check them out. But that's enough from me. What about you guys? What are your favourite Game Gear games? Are there any that I've chosen that you'd swap out? If so, let us know in the comments below. As always, if you've made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. This has been James the Segaholic of the Sega Guys, and until next time, we'll see you on the Sega side.